Hi, I'm Danielle with Stitch and Designs. Welcome back to my channel. For today's tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to do jelly light up bags. So this is my Care Bear belly light up belly design. I used a waterproof canvas from Stitch Don't Kill My Vibes. I absolutely love it. So then I also have the Care Bear overall quilt design on it. So turned out super duper cute. So in this one, I did the lights that went around the belly. And then I also, because I jumped across and went around the hearts as well to help really light it up, because if I didn't, the middle would have been pretty dark because it is a little bit wider between the lights. So I put it in here and I will show you how to be able to make that jump without having to have the lights be able to see right there. So that way it's kind of a dark, so that way you, I don't know, you just won't see the light, the little white light wire that goes across right there. So then it just looks like this lights up around and then this lights up and it's like, oh. But so I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial. If you guys at any time like something, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. I got more tutorials coming your way. Let's get started making the Care Bear belly light up design. So in my hoop, I have tearaway stabilizer. So the first thing it's going to do is we're going to do the placement stitch for the jelly vinyl itself. Go ahead and pull your hoop out. At this point, we have our placement, so we see exactly where we need to have. So you want to make sure that when you cut your jelly piece, you want it larger than your placement stitch, like a decent size larger, because that's how you're going to be able to attach your clear vinyl to that. If you cut it and then you accidentally trim it down, which I have done before, it makes it really difficult to be able to attach your clear vinyl for your lights. So you want to make sure that you give yourself a good amount of space, probably like a minimum of a ½ inch. So a ½ inch to an inch on all four sides that you want your jelly vinyl to be larger. So go ahead and then lay your jelly on top. And then you're going to want to grab some masking tape to help just hold the jelly in place. Okay, and just double check that you have good clearance on all your sides to be able to sew it down later. Okay, and this is when you're also going to grab your exterior piece. If you are, so the way that I have the belly and the design set up is it has like a little extra border around it. So if you were going to be doing a light up design on cotton woven, this is the design the type of design you'd want to have, because then that border will then allow for, because that strip of vinyl that goes over the top of it will cover up your edges of your cotton woven, so then you don't have to worry about it fraying. If you're going to be utilizing a vinyl or a non-fraying material, you wouldn't necessarily have to do this, but it's like a nice little extra border piece around it. So you want to make sure I already have my snips in the top and the bottom, so I can have my design or my fabric centered in my hoop. And you just want to kind of figure out where you want your design to be on your exterior. So I kind of like that there. And where's something heavy enough I can, maybe. This is where it helped to have had the tape free cut. So then once you get your fabric or your material where you want it, tape your material down. Okay, now we're going to put our hoop back in. And we're going to run our tack down stitch. So this is going to tack down the jelly and your outer material. They're going to tack that down together and it's going to hold everything. And then we're going to then start our first part of our applique cutting. Okay, go ahead and remove your hoop. And so at this time, you're going to want to grab your pair of scissors. I like to use my applique scissors that I got from Chic Geek. I really notice a good improvement on my cutting when I use this. So if you want to save this middle design, start by going on the edge. Like, just kind of like try to pinch your fabric together close, just so you can kind of get a little snip or get in there. Or you can use a seam ripper to make a start hole. But just be really careful. You don't want to accidentally poke all the way through and then poke your jelly and then you have a hole in your jelly. And then once you get a start, just work your way around, cutting out the inner material. Fun. Now I have this little piece that's kind of like its little belly, so I can always applique that onto something else. And as you're going, just like a little helpful hint, if you accidentally snip your threads, it's not the end of the world because you're going to end up putting that border around it, so it's okay. But if this was going to be your outside line and you accidentally snipped it, then just throw it into your machine and just either fast forward to that part and then just do that little area again. So it is a-okay. So on your back, I'm just kind of making a hole. You could probably use your seam ripper, would be better. And you're going to remove your cutaway stabilizer, or sorry, your tearaway stabilizer. And try to get it as close to the edge as possible. I'm going to grab my other. And then if you have the threads, go ahead and take the time to snip them away.
Once you have the stabilizer ripped off, our next step is going to be doing the border of the belly. If your exterior is a non-fraying material, you can go ahead and skip this step if you so choose. But if you have a fraying material, I would highly recommend that you use this border.
So we're going to place the white over the top, and you're going to make sure that it covers and goes past your outline that you have currently, because this is going to get stitched down a little to the inside and a little to the outside. So you really want to make sure that it is completely covered. And I'm just going to throw some tape on it just to kind of help hold it so you don't have to worry about anything moving. All right, go ahead and put it back into your machine, and it's going to then tack down those two. So like I said, the inner and the outer. So now we're going to take our scissors, and you're going to cut on the outside, and then you're going to cut on the inside, and then you're going to be left with that little bit of a border from the white. And then again, you can also, depending on how close you cut to the edge to start, you can totally reuse this piece for another applique piece. And we got our belly's almost getting there. Well, the belly part is there, so now we just need to do the insignia on the inside. So the first thing after we put it back in is going to do the placement stitch for the lower heart and then we'll completely do that heart, and then it's going to come over and then we'll do this heart. I'm going to grab my pink jelly. So for this one, because I don't need to actually attach any of the lights directly to this heart, I can cut it right on top, or true to its size. And so now the next step is gonna run the tack down for the jelly. Go ahead and remove the hoop. You can pull off your tape, save it for when we go to do the next heart, or the little cover piece for it. The next part we're going to then add, so just like we have the little border for the belly, we're going to have borders for the hearts. Before I do that, I'm going to trim all these threads. It'll make life easier, because then with the border coming in, it's just going to make it harder to trim these. So make sure, if you can, trim before the border. And the only reason I'm doing a border is because I plan to put lights around the hearts as well. So not only will I have the outside of here, but I'll also have them on the inside.
So go ahead and grab your material that you're going to have for the border around the heart, place it on top, make sure to use some tape to help secure it in place. Then you can throw your hoop back in, and it's going to do the tack down for that piece.
Go ahead and remove the hoop. Save your tape for later. And we're going to trim the exterior and on the inside. So depending on how well, if you wanted to cut really well, once we do the other one, I still have a whole nother belly I could make and just do this as a regular applique. Actually, that'd actually be really cute. Okay, so now it's going to move over to the other heart. It's going to do the placement. And let's throw this back in. Go ahead and remove your hoop, and just like the first time the first heart we did, we're going to cut a piece of jelly vinyl true to size. Okay, go ahead and put that back into your hoop, and it's going to do the tack down for that heart. Okay, go ahead and you can, we'll need that just one more time. Then go ahead and just trim off the excess around. Just be really careful when you get back over here, because they do overlap. You don't want to accidentally cut into your vinyl here, and then as you're just going across the top of this jelly, just be careful you don't want to accidentally stab that part as either. And our last one, we don't need these little pieces. And we're going to lay this over the top, making sure that all parts are completely covered with a little bit of extra. And then add your hoop back, and we're going to run the last steps, and it is going to be the tack down for the border around the heart. All right, the last of the embroidery is finished, so we can throw away our masking tape. Some long threads. And then lastly, we're going to trim away on the outside and on the inside. So now we got all that done. So here's what we cut out, and if you did cut it out really closely, how perfect. We have a whole other set of applique. Right, now for the fun part and the tedious part. Getting ready for the lights. I'm going to meet you back over at my work table and we'll go from there. Okay, let's go ahead and remove.
Once you get your design removed from your hoop and all the tape off, you can go ahead and remove all the excess tearaway stabilizer. And if you happen to have large enough pieces like these, you can save them for some 4x4s or other potential projects.
And then while I'm looking at the back, I want to make sure to trim up any of the loose threads, because you don't want, like, once you get the lights and everything sewn in there, you can't go in there and trim them back. So while you have the time and you're able to, trim away. So you do not want to trim this. So if you've accidentally trimmed this, your job for when you go to add the lights is going to be a little bit harder. So leave this. This is very important to have long, because that's how we attach our lights. This inner part is just like an extra fun little decorative thing that I'm doing because it's Care Bears. All right, let's grab our clear vinyl. So this is a size 16 gauge. I get this from Marine Vinyl. All right, so you want to make sure to leave this larger fabric. My vinyl scissors are in another room. So you want to cut your clear vinyl larger than your design. So you can either do this from the front or the back. It really does not matter. But I'm just going to do it on the back. And this is only a temporary thing. So you kind of want to make sure that when you're taping this down to be able to trace, you want to make sure that you have a decent amount of your clear vinyl around the design, because that's what's going to get attached to the excess jelly vinyl. So you want to make sure that you don't have just like a little tiny amount on just the one side. And so just taping it down will just help hold it in place while we trace. So go ahead and grab your Sharpie. You can use a thicker one or a thinner one. I like the thinner ones. And so then you're going to trace your design. So as you're going, you just want to trace around. You don't want to necessarily be on the edge where you're on the inside of the jelly, but you just need to know for you where your line's going to be, because this is how you're going to add your lights. If you want your lights to be seen, then it's just you'll get it once we start putting the lights down. So if you know you drew your line on the outer side, and when you go to sew your lights down, you can put them towards the inside, or you need to put them right on top of the line. That is 100% a personal preference. But the big thing is you need to know where you put your line and how you're going to do your lights. So now that you have that part done, we can remove the tape. And then that part you can completely set aside for now. So this is what you'll be left with working with. So this is the stabilizer for it. So for this, you're just going to be needing just a basic needle and then clear thread. So I got this stuff from Joann's. It's called Invisible, or it's from Sulky Invisible, it's called Invisible. The brand is Sulky. So if you're curious, that's what it is. And I just use this as like a little Dollar Tree hair tie thing. Just helps hold yes, I know I could put it in here, but then I just keep it helps keep my needle. I keep my needle with it. So this is a really hard part. I'm going to turn on an extra light. You want to do this somewhere where it's really well lit. And if you need your glasses, grab your glasses, because this is a lot of, because it's clear, it makes it can make it really difficult. And the reason I say to use clear is the very first time that I ever did a light up bag, I chose to do black thread, thinking, oh, no big deal. Nope. You see this, you will see the striations. Even if it's like a lighter color, you can still potentially see the striations because it's a solid thread. This being clear, if it will help, like light can still go through it, where a regular thread, light will not go through it. So you can get the striations and the lights. So not always super fun, or it doesn't look as nice. So just go ahead and thread it like you normally would a regular needle and thread. And then pull it through. I know that you guys cannot tell what I'm doing because you're not going to be able to see the thread. So this is going to be the hardest part of the tutorial. So you just get to your ends. And just like a normal needle and thread, if you're going to be doing any other hand sewing, tie a knot at the end. And you're going to end up having to rethread this depending on your design, depending on how close and how many stitches you'd put in and stuff like that. You'll be rethreading this quite a few times. So I only do one single knot. And so we can go ahead and just don't lose it. That's the hardest part. So if you I'm going to set my needle back in there so I know where that is, because it's really easy to lose your thread. So go ahead and grab your lights. I already have batteries in my pack, and you want to make sure to test your lights prior to sewing them down. So make sure that your battery pack and lights are clipped together, and double check that they light up. So I don't know if you can hear them. But the battery, I don't know if you guys can actually hear that, but the battery pack does emit a small humming noise. If it is like super loud, I would change out the battery pack, because the battery pack will make a small humming noise. But if it's really loud, then there might be an issue with the battery pack. And double check that it cycles through all the settings. And when you turn it off, it turns off. I've had a couple times where I've had batteries and it has nothing to do with the company that you get them from. Sometimes they're just bad battery packs. So I've had some times where when the back pack is off, but the lights are still on. So then change out the battery pack and it's like, oh, okay, it works. So then usually I end up throwing that battery pack away. And I believe you can get more, just buy battery packs, I believe. I'd have to look at that, I'm not sure. But so we know that works. And then you can go ahead and set your battery pack aside, and then you can unwind your lights. Mine are like, they normally don't come packed this big or wide. I've already played with this one and then decided not to use it. So that's why it's so big. So before you start, I'm just going to bring this over so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. So before you start, you want to make sure to kind of pre-plan out where you're going to start, where you're going to end. So I'm going to end up probably starting somewhere over here. And then I'm going to, when I get back to here, I'm going to jump across this gap and then figure out how I'm going to, I don't know exactly, probably because that is the shortest distance, which would make it easier. So I'm still trying to figure out, because I'm going to have to double up at some point to be able to get all the way around the heart. So I don't know if I want to come from here and go this way, or go, well, yeah, at some point, like, something's going to get it going around twice, because that's just, unless I come in from like here, and then I only have that little bit that I overlap, which would probably be easier, but that's just such a bigger gap. But I will show you when I get to that part, I will show you a trick that I saw on, it was a cosplayer. No, it was somebody adding EL lights to like the outside of a store-bought bag or whatever, and they were making it look like Tron. So there's a way to slip something over this, heat shrink over this, to be able to block out the light that's right there, so then it's not as visible. Will it be seen? It could potentially be seen still, but it's better than just having a bright light shining across that. Okay, so that sounds like the best option for me. So we're going to start with the side that has our battery. We're going to start with the side that has our battery plug-in. And I'm going to start I'm going to start it a little on the outside of it, just because I know it's going to come back around here, and then it's going to go across. So I'm going to start over here. And the tail always gets in my way. So to help yourself start, tape down that part, so that way at least as you're getting started. And then I'm just going to throw some tape over this, because then I don't have to worry about the tail wandering off and doing weird stuff. And then plus it's really easy to catch your line on it, so I'm hoping I have less chances of getting caught. Okay. So I usually like to start from the bottom, and then I'm going to be putting my lights directly on my line. Okay, I brought you guys in closer, so I'm hoping that will help things. So I want to make for mine, I'm going to be adding my lights directly onto my line. And I'm going to move this one over just a little bit. Once I get started, then this one can kind of go away. So I'm going to be trying to figure out where the video camera actually is. There we go. So I'm going to be starting from the bottom, working my way up. And so my two fingers, right here, my two fingers, the thread is going in between those two fingers. So I'm pulling the thread all the way through, but I don't want to pull it completely, because I only have one knot in there. And even when you have like 2, 3, 4 knots, sometimes the thread can pull through still, because you're working on clear vinyl, and so it's not like regular fabric where it kind of like folds back on itself or whatever. It just stays that size, so it stays big. So now I have my finger in the, I guess, where the loop or the end, the tail of the thread. I don't know. Yeah, I know you guys can't see that, so I'm trying. So my finger's in between. So the knot for the two tails of the thread is right here. And so one side of each of the threads is going on each side of my finger. So then I will go back down, And the purpose of this is to then take the needle and go in between the two pieces of thread and then pull through. So it kind of like makes a loop. And that I've found to be the best way to lock off on the bottom. That way you're not having to sit there and tie a bazillion knots and try to get it to stay, because then something with this stuff, the knots sometimes want to work its way loose. And so at that point, then it's just a matter of do it a couple times here at the beginning. You don't have to do that same loop lock thing. Just now at this point, it's just up and over, up and over, up and over. And then just being careful of your thread knotting. And when clear thread knots, it's really fun because it's hard to tell. So this is the fun part of doing lights. And this is the time-consuming part too. So doing just this part, I might be able, like if I were to time this, which based on the video, I'll be able to know if I can sew my bag faster than my lights. Okay. Okay, yay. Okay, so I'm on top. Okay. And then go back down. Okay, and once you get the couple stitches started, then all you literally do is follow your lines. And then another piece of advice is when you're going, you don't necessarily need to get your stitches super close together or right next to each other, because every time you go in or poke a hole, you're perforating your vinyl. And if you put a bunch of stitches really close together, you've perforated that area. And then when you go to try to pull or do anything, you could eventually just rip that vinyl right there. So you definitely don't want to make a bunch of holes super close together. All right, first obstacle, the turn. So when you do turns, and especially like sharp corners are really hard. If you're doing a sharp corner, because this one's going to go from the end going that way. Sometimes if you like kind of pinch, so I'm starting to lose. That's the other bummer part about this eventually, because the oils in your hands will eventually smudge out your Sharpie. So you'll have to be redrawing your Sharpie as you go. Heads up. So keep your Sharpie close. So I just kind of like squeeze and pinch a little bit. And then that kind of helps with the angle. And then sometimes off you go on the back. If you go, so on the back you have the loops of where you were. If you go through one of those, so if I were to pull it up, so I'm going through one of those, that's just like another way to help like kind of lock your threads in place and then continue on. So I usually like to do those around curves. That will help hold it in place. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and as you're doing this, you will find stuff that will work better for you. Like I don't know how to do everything on this. Like I'm still learning myself. I watch other videos and pick up tips from watching cosplayers use these. So everything is just trial and error. Figuring out what works for you, what you like to do. And then the biggest thing is remembering how to do it, because like with me with quilting, you asked me to do a half square triangle quilt, I would struggle with that so hard. But I figured out how to do it again. It's been years since I've done a half square triangle quilt. Okay, so now that that part is finished, just the outside, I haven't even done the inside. Oh, yeah. So I'm going to do a test. I'm going to turn off some lights. I'm going to take it to a dark place. Kind of a dark place. And give it a little test fit and see how I like it. Oh, that's because it's backwards. I'm like, why is this not fitting? That looks pretty darn good. Depending, I wonder how much I would have. I could, yeah, I'm kind of a little far away up here. But, yeah, so it depends on where you want to put your lights, depends on the look, overall look you want to go for, whether you don't want any lights right on the edge, or if you, so like over here, if so, with my little shadow, so lights are seen, you can see the lights on the edge, and then if you push it over, your lights really aren't seen as much. So that part is completely personal preference. all in all, not bad. So I now kind of need to figure out, do I want to go around, as I figure out where my line is, how much light wire do I have left, and do I have enough to potentially go around maybe to the inside again? Because I wouldn't mind it if it could go in a little bit more. So I'm just kind of doing a little mock-up, tracing it. So I'm going to go around a second time. Now I just need to decide in on the or the out. Probably gonna go to the inside, would be easier. So just for reference, just to go around this one time took about 40 minutes. Just to do that one go. And this isn't even a super detailed or crazy design or a very big design. So these things are they are very time consuming, but lots of fun. Finished going around the second time. I'm gonna eventually go back through, and there's a couple areas where it's kind of doesn't really want to lay flat and could be a little bit better. So once I get this done, I'll go back and finish those little pieces. But let me unplug that. So I'm gonna now make the jump from here to here. And so I want to make sure, because I don't want the light to show through, snagging some of my husband's heat shrink. And so the little end cap, you're going to want to remove that.
Make sure to save that end cap because you're going to need it at the end.
So I grabbed the 3 and 32, 3 and 32ths. I don't know, whatever is labeled here. And so you just slide that on. I'm not going to need the entire length of this, but we can always trim that off. Mark it out and then trim it. So I want to slide that over. So now I can see how far I go over. I know my Sharpie's around here.
So make a mark with your Sharpie where at the edge of the design, so that's where we're going to know where we need to cut it.
And then just to kind of give you guys an idea of what it's going to look like. So if I put this down, yes, you're going to see the white. But if I throw like something light behind it as well, like if I put a piece of white, it's not as like, you can see it, but it's not as bad. Where if I don't have it at all, you can see that you truly see the light going across. So you can use it, not use it. It's totally your personal preference. But if I were just to kind of like let it just chill out there, you really don't notice it. And if you like press on it, yeah, you're gonna see it. But once the jelly kind of like gets that spacing, it's not super obvious. Alright, so this is the side that we're gonna keep. here comes the fun part. So as you're doing this, you got to be quick. You don't want to, you want it to melt because it's what's going to help hold it in place. But you don't want to leave it on for too long. You don't want to burn your thread. You don't want to, yeah, there's a lot of things you don't want to do. So, but now it's held in place, and we can continue on to do the heart. So I'm starting to get down towards the end of my thread, and I want to be able to make sure that I'm going to have enough. So to be able to lock it off, and an easy way to do it is to slide your needle underneath some of the stitches you've done on the back, and then you can pull it up and then loop it around the thread a couple times, and then you pull the needle through the hole or the loop in your thread, and then you pull up, and then you have a knot down at the bottom, and then pull off more of your thread. I don't know if you can see that, so I just tie a little knot on the end. And so I don't know if you guys, just in case you guys didn't understand me before when I said that I would split the thread, so you can see the ends. I don't know how well you can see it. I don't know if my hand is helping or, nope, my hand was not helping. Okay, so you have your knot here, and then you have the sides of the threads because you're folding it in half, and the needle's at the half point. So when you go to start or stop, or not stop, when you go to start on this time, instead of like poking a hole through it, I'm just going to slide it through some of the stitches on the back. But what you're going to do is you're going to take, so let's just say my clear vinyl is here where my fingers are. So this is on one of the ends, and so my needle already went through, hence why the tail goes down. And then when you bring the needle back up, you're going to bring it through the middle in between the two. I know you can't tell that I'm actually going in between. And then pull it through, and so then this, so let me just hold that, will create a loop. So here's the end of the loop right here. And so that's what's going to be able to help lock off this thread when you go to start it. So for this, I'm just going to slide it through some of the stitching that's already there. So pull my needle through. And I'm going to find my end. And I got it split. There, I did. Okay, so it's split now. I'm going to pull my needle through, bringing my the split end to the closer to the base, or in closer, and I'm going to bring my needle up through. And so like it's looped on my finger right now. So if I take my finger out, it made a loop, and I can pull. So that's how you would start. Well, I still have to go back in and finish that one piece, but we can at least check out to see if I want to go double around the heart. So let's take it to a dark place. No, I think it looks pretty darn good without having to go over it a second time. Let me get this out of the way. Let's take it to a really dark place. So I say that looks pretty darn good, because I don't know if I would want to go around the hearts a second time. So an option I could do is, because the white jelly is in front and behind the colored one, I can always cut out the white, so that might be able to help, so it's not quite so many layers. That might be able to help let it shine through a little bit more. But yeah, I say that looks pretty darn good. So here's the other settings. And then off. So as I mentioned before, I did cut out the white that was on the back of this, so that way it just helped the light perfuse better through it. Alright, now let's finish this up. So I have my needle, and I'm just going to take a little bit of thread, because I only really have to like finish it. Unplug. Yeah, whenever make sure you are always unplugged when you're working with the light wiring you're sewing. Just because in case you accidentally poke through the wire, I have no idea what it would do. For this part, you definitely want to make sure you're unplugged, because we're going to be cutting the wire. It's like, yes, I have all this left over, but it is what it is. Not all designs take so not a lot of designs take a lot of wire. So that's why if you have the option to get like 1 meter or 3 feet, that's more than plenty for the bulk of designs. Because if you start getting into really big designs and your spacing between your wires is larger than really 2 inches, or even less than that, because you'll start getting dead spots where the light doesn't shine and it's really dark. All right, so now is that time where you needed to save that end cap. Come on. So we're going to put that end cap back on. Okay. So it doesn't go in very far, so I'm just going to cut part of it off so it fits a little better. And sometimes these end caps do not want to come off. So sometimes you have to be a little creative with it. I've taken some where the end where it's at, I've cut right at the edge of that cap, and then I've literally sat there and took the needle and then picked out the wire out of it, so that way it would come out of the cap. Because yeah, sometimes those suckers just don't want to come out, or come off, I should say. And so now we're just going to stitch around the end cap to make sure to hold the end of it in place. And so sometimes I'll also, because the very end of the cap, the wire doesn't go all the way to the end. So there, I will, if I can, sometimes I can't always do it, or even if it's just a little bit of the cap, I'll sew through just a little bit of the cap and then sew it down. So then it's really not going to move. And since that's right there, we'll go around that a couple times, or at least once. Okay, now I'm gonna kind of go. I'm not gonna cut this off, but I'm gonna go. So over here, see how it's like looped up on itself. I want that to lay flat, so that way I can actually, so we can see that. So that looks pretty darn good. I'm happy with that. This baby, well, at least this part is now done. So if you want to, you can add a piece of light colored vinyl or whatever behind it to help lighten it, like make this lighter. So personal preference, you don't have to if you don't want to. So now that we're all trimmed up and ready to rock, let's plug it in again. And then we take it to a dark place. So now we're going to get ready for our placement. So this is a really important step. So you want to just make sure you get everything lined up how you want it to get lined up. When you're happy with that, grab some clips. And this is why it's really important to have your jelly and your clear long, or you have excess on the sides. Because now what you're going to do is go around clipping your jelly and your clear vinyl together. And then if your clear vinyl is too long, like this side's a little long on the jelly, just trim it. Because you really want to make sure that you get everything locked down in place. That way you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so down here our jelly is pretty long. Oop, yeah, my clip wasn't even on that one. So just take your scissors and trim it away. It's better to have it be a little long than not long enough. One more time, double check it. So we're in a dark place. So did anything move? Does it look good? It looks good. Okay. So this is what it would look like if I don't have anything on the back, but I still have to add I'm going to be still adding my stabilizer. So if I add my stabilizer, I don't necessarily need to add any light colored one because you could see how much it lightened that up. So here's with it. Here's without it. With it. Without it. I know you might not be able to see the best on the video, but it does make a difference in person. So, yep, and that So now that the lights part is done, I'm going to disconnect it again. If you wanted to add a piece of clear vinyl or like light colored vinyl or anything like that directly to this, that's the time to add it, make it the same size as this, and then you can sew all the layers together. So now that this is done, I can take this over to my sewing machine. You're just going to be sewing through your jelly and your clear. That's the only two layers you're going to be sewing through. And so then at that point, then everything is ready to go. And then you can add, so when I add this, yes, I'll iron over the top of where the jelly is, but I'm really going to be focusing on my edges. I'm not really going to be hammering the middle part as hard. I'm just going to make sure to really focus on the outsides. But another option is I could use, if I wanted to, if you're not using something with Decovil or anything, you could use foam. Foam is always good. And then because I'm going to be adding that, I'll make sure to like figure out where it's going to come out. I will cut a hole in my Decovil right there, and so that way my wire can come through that part. And then after that, it's just a matter of putting it in your bag and then making a hole on the inside of your bag for it to come through, and then you can hook up your light, your battery pack, and you're good to go. Okay, so before I finish sewing this up, I wanted to show you guys how lately I've been doing it. So like I said before, I made a hole in my Decovil, so it's not like, it's really ironed down around the edges, but it's not so much over the middle where the lights are and everything. And another thing, on the back of it, instead of using vinyl, I put felt this time because the felt was super white and bright, and I had that exact perfect size for it. So I was like, well, let's give this a try. So, but this is my pocket, and this is the Erica Bowler, so it is binding. So I just made, like I said, a hole in the Decovil. I made a small hole, or I just purposely didn't stitch right here. Slid my battery or my light wire to the inside, and so now I can push that wire up to one side if I want, and then if I wanted to get like that hole a little bit smaller, you can just take like a needle and thread and then stitch that closed, so that way you don't worry about anything possibly falling out or anything, or it would take a lot for the wire to back itself out, which I highly doubt that it would, but you never know. So I just wanted to show you guys, this is like lately how I've been doing it instead of using a grommet, but it really depends on where your wire is coming in. So if this wire was all the way over here, it's not going to get into the pocket. It wouldn't fit into a slip pocket. So then, yeah, I would have to put a grommet there. But since it started over here, it worked out here. And then if I tried with my slip pocket, and it was just outside the slip pocket area. So, sorry. So it just depends on where it's at. You can make it work so you don't have to use a grommet. But little tip there for you.
Thank you for watching this tutorial on the Care Bear Light Up Belly. And if at any time you like something, please give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because there's more tutorials to come. Have a great day.